Hello everyone and welcome to the Tank Club's ultimate guide for crafting and professions in Ravendawn. If you have played other MMORPGs such as Black Desert Online or Final Fantasy XIV, then you might notice some similar features with Ravendawn's crafting and gathering systems since they are inspired by those games. Crafting plays a huge part in Ravendawn since all gear in the game is player made and is not looted from enemies. Crafting is accessible as long as you have the materials or you find the correct nodes. You can begin developing your professions straight away, and it's well worth investing your time into crafts for gear, character progression, experience, and the financial benefits. In this guide, we will teach you everything about Ravendawn's professions, along with tips and tricks on how to craft great gear, which passives are the most useful, and everything you need to know to start developing your professions in the game. What professions are you leveling up and which are your favourite in Ravendawn? Let me know in the comments below. So you don't need anything to start developing your professions in Ravendawn, as some of them can be utilised straight away. Once you pass the tutorial phase of the game, you can begin seeking out harvestable nodes for woodcutting and mining. These are distinctly obvious, as you'll see an axe symbol on choppable trees and a pickaxe symbol on mineable rocks. Fishing is slightly different, as you'll need to obtain a fishing rod and hook. You will obtain these from raiding the Raiders quest at level 12 from the NPC in Margrove, or you can also buy them from the market. Farming and husbandry requires you to unlock the community land, which you gain access to after leaving the slums quest at the very start of the game. Once you unlock your farm, you can begin growing crops, trees, plants. You can put down animals in a more passive profession, which is also very profitable. Crafting requires materials which you can gather yourself or purchase from other players on the market. You are then able to create gear, weapons, and food from all the crafting professions. Finally, breeding can be done if you have player-owned land. Although this might change soon due to the lack of land available, this allows you to breed Moa mounts in the hope of creating higher tier and rarer mounts. So we're looking first at gathering resources. So gathering relates to fishing, mining, woodcutting, farming and husbandry, where you will obtain a range of materials. Gathering is typically straightforward. You need to seek out gatherable materials, which are identified by the pickaxe icon on stone for mining, the axe icon on trees for woodcutting, and the hook icon in water for fishing. The higher your level in a gathering profession, the more likely you are to obtain high level materials. Certain trees can only be cut down if you have a higher level woodcutting, and you will only see them as being a cuttable tree when you level up your woodcutting. When gathering, a minigame will appear on the screen. Stopping the meter in the green section will simply speed up the gathering time. You will need to stop this 3 times in the green section to successfully pass the minigame. It is vital to utilise your gathering to obtain materials so you can craft useful items with those materials, and it becomes very expensive to craft otherwise. Woodcutting is by far one of the easiest to level up. You'll find cuttable trees located all over Ravendawn on the overland areas. Due to it being easier, it's also the slowest to level up due to how easy the materials are to find. If you do want to speed up your woodcutting skill, you can place trees in your community farmland, which provides considerable more profession experience. So this is a way to boost it up much faster. Mining is far more difficult. You'll need to find specific mines and caves which have mining nodes. These are highly contested with other players due to the fact there are far fewer mining nodes in the game, and it is a much harder thing to level up. You need to look out for any locations on your map with the name mine, and always check around areas on the map as well that have kind of got that grey rock area. They're always underground. These are potential mining node locations, and that's where you want to be looking for. Gathering weaving materials is not a profession, but it is an essential task. You'll need to kill enemies that provide resources such as hair and hide, which can then be used for weaving. And weaving materials are also part of farming, so you can do certain things within farming that will give you those materials as well, such as various animals will give hide and hair. You can also gain cotton and things like that from your farmland as well. When farming materials, you'll gain items of different qualities. These are highlighted by the colour around the item, and higher quality items are much more useful for crafting, which we'll talk about more in the crafting part of this guide. So when we look at gathering passives in general, the only correct answer for all gathering professions is to take the increased chance to gain double materials. This significantly increases your profit, It gives you much better value for your gathering, and it's absolutely essential to pick these as soon as possible, especially if you want to develop your crafting skills or you're looking to make a lot of silver. Secondly, I personally like going for the increased experience. Since gathering professions are very slow to level up, it helps you level up those much faster, but also start getting the more valuable materials, because the faster you get to the next threshold, so when it comes to mining, you'll want to get to level 10 so that you can start getting iron ore, and if you don't do that faster, obviously you'll be farming much lower quality materials. So experience is typically not valuable long term, but it is very useful at the starting phases. Now with passives, you do only get one every 3 levels, so that does mean that they are quite difficult to obtain passive points. You might not want to invest into experience, but it can be good to do so. Now all gathering skills include a bonus to gain extra rare items, gems, dense logs, 3-leaf clovers. These are much more useful later in the game, so it might be worth saving these passives till kind of closer to the end when you start gaining a much higher level in that gathering profession, because these items aren't that useful to start with. So they are good, they are useful much later down the line, so save this passive for much later on. Now the one thing that you really don't need is faster gathering speed. It's really not useful in most cases, and it's just a waste of passive points, especially very early on, since you have the mini game that will speed up your gathering speed. For mining, it may be good, however, if you consistently have problems with enemies or other players while mining. You also have the option of the Diplomatic Exaltation Reputation passive, which can help overcome some of this as well. Next, we're going to look at the Community Farmland. You'll unlock your Community Farmland on the City of Ravencrest quest at level 6, and as you increase your legacy level, you'll access more of the available land until you reach level 25, when the whole land will become available to use. In an update that's on the way soon, you'll also gain the access to medium and large land within the community land, because there's no overland housing remaining, so this is coming in a future update. In this area, you need to press the toggle house mode button near your minimap to begin planting items. Next, you select the item you wish to plant, select the location, and you will spend silver and effort points to plant the item. You'll then have to wait a certain amount of time before you can then harvest these items. So every time you earn 100 experience by killing enemies, you'll gain 1 effort point, and this can be increased with the purchase of Patron. Each item requires effort and silver to be placed in the farmland, so gaining effort is very important, or else eventually you'll run out and then you'll not be able to place anything else on your farmland. After a period of time, you'll also have the option to do certain actions with your farm, such as watering, which will increase the chance of getting a 3-leaf clover, or using fertilizer to increase the yield of your harvest, or with animals, it'll increase the chance of gaining fertilizer. So you want to press on those things to boost up and gain those extra bits when you're doing your farming. Once an item is fully grown, you can then press to harvest it. All farming actions will bring up the gathering minigame, which will speed up the gathering time. This farmland is not just for farming and husbandry. You can also plant trees to level up woodcutting substantially faster than regular trees, and you'll be able to find certain plants and animals that provide useful materials for weaving and various other things. So farmland can impact many of your other professions and is absolutely vital. So when we take a look at farming and husbandry, some of the easiest professions to develop are farming and husbandry, due to being able to utilize them while offline and not requiring a lot of effort to do them. Farming is a very profitable task, especially if you have the passives, which increase your chance at gaining double materials. Planting potatoes has been one of the best profits for a while, spending 85 silver, and you'll gain anywhere from 2 to 8 potatoes, which can then be sold for 60 to 70 silver each. If you then do this every hour and have the full-size farmland, that's somewhere between 64 and 254 potatoes an hour, depending on if you have the extra resource passive and how lucky you are. Farming can also be used to your advantage to help with leveling your cooking skill. Combining both farming with cooking allows you to level up an additional profession easily, and it's a great way to gain a ton of experience for both your legacy level, your archetypes, and your crafting skills. You should always keep an eye on which foods people are buying, which trade packs are available and selling well, because there are many farming items that will sell very, very well based on that and how much people are doing certain trade packs. You can gain a huge profit from growing the right crops and also utilizing your time very well by planting items that will grow while you're offline and planting shorter duration items when you can log in more frequently. So while you're offline, you might want to plant corn if you know you're not going to be playing for 15 hours, and then when you're going to be online for 3 hours, you could make sure you place in potatoes every hour, and just making sure you're growing things that you need for cooking or things that you know are going to sell, and just making the absolute most of your time, because this will also give you that legacy experience, that archetype experience. So it's helping to level up your character and your account as well. So it's very, very useful. Husbandry can be very profitable also, but it has some items that are currently not very valuable, and it can be quite costly to do husbandry. The main benefits from husbandry are the much larger amounts of experience you gain, but also you will gain crafting items that can be used for weaving, such as hide and wool, rather than just food items for cooking and trade packs. When you place an animal, you have a period of time where it needs to mature before it will provide any resources. You can see this information by looking at the part that says butchering. That is the length of time it takes for the animal to mature. So you might need to place it and wait for 8 hours before you can then harvest materials from it. With animals, you usually have an option on what you want to do with them. So you can gather off them, or you can butcher them. Butchering means they will instantly be done and you'll no longer gain any more benefit from that animal. If you harvest instead, you can do so 3 times before they're gone. So for example, you might wait 8 hours for the animal to mature, and then you'll be able to harvest from it every 3 hours to gain the materials. Depending on what you want to do, the best strategy is to harvest twice and then butcher if you are more focused on XP and maybe you want the food material at the end of it. If you want more profit or materials for harvesting, then you want to just do that. Do the harvesting option 3 times is the best one for that. When we look at the passives for husbandry and farming, with husbandry, since husbandry is very high experience gain, you might want to take the experience. However, increasing the double chance of materials is essential if you want to make a profit. But since this is a high experience gain profession, then taking that experience gain might be useful. The increased chance to gain fertilizer is also really good, as these can be sold or used to increase the amount of food items you get from farming. So it's another thing that will increase your profit, and this is really, really useful. It doesn't matter at what stage of the game you are, especially if you've got crops that take a lot of hours to grow. Let's say corn, for example. Maybe you want to use a fertilizer on that to gain a much higher yield. There's some food items that take 24 hours, 28 hours, so they take a very long time. You might want to make the most of that time by using fertilizer to gain even more. Finally, the increased harvesting speed is the last thing that you want to take. I really don't think having a 22% increased total harvest speed is that useful, especially in the farmland. And with the husbandry, both cheese and honey I've seen a lot of use. So using both of those, you take either one, but you want to fill one set of passives, take your preferred option, and then do the same, and then fill a second set to take the second one. With the farming passives, you have to take the increased double materials because it does mean a huge extra profit. The increased experience again seems like the next most valuable thing, especially if you stay on top of your farming activities. You'll gain a lot of extra experience. It's quite easy to level up your farming to level 30 in a short space of time, so it can be good to get that experience. The additional 3-leaf clover would be the third passive that I would take, but they only appear to be used in 2 cooking ingredients with rich flour and spicy seasoning. So it's not overly important, but it's definitely something that you'll need later on for the higher level cooking meals. And the last thing again is the increased harvesting speed, as again 22% increased speed in the farmland isn't that useful. Something to think about is the extra passives. So with farming, for example, you've got the cherries and you've got the peppers, so you can choose one or the other. Now, to unlock one of these, you need to fill an entire line of passives. So once you've got all of the gathering passives, you can choose one of these, and then when you fill another whole line, you can unlock the second one. So it's up to you which one you take. I personally think that cherries is better early on, and then later on, you will get more benefit from the peppers. Next, we're going to look at getting started with crafting. So to start crafting, you will need materials, and you'll need to find a suitable crafting station, and you'll always find stations located in Ravencrest. You need to look for the blue symbol on your map, which shows you the type of station. When you approach a crafting station, you press F to interact, and you bring up the crafting menu for that specific craft. If you have raw materials, you'll now need to refine these. So if you have copper ore, this will need refining into copper ingots, for example, before you can create anything with it. You need to select the item that you want to craft, and now you'll see the crafting bar. So crafting is split into 5 parts when you want to create a new item. To successfully craft an item, you'll need to fill the progress bar without reaching 0 on both labor and durability. Crafting requires you to use crafting skills to complete a craft. So as soon as you begin crafting, your skill bar changes to a crafting based skill bar. When you hover over the skills, you can see what they do. And depending on your skill level, you'll gain more and more usable craft skills as you develop your crafting further. So what does this crafting bar mean? So progress. This is the meter which shows your progress towards successfully completing the craft. So once that is full, the item is successfully crafted. The quality is the quality level of the item. If you fill this, it will improve the quality of the final item. So when you fill the quality bar, the item will change from a regular item and it will have a green border around it. It'll be upgraded to the next level of quality. If we use a food item as an example, a standard food will just be the standard level that it will give you. If you get the next level of quality up, that same food will now provide additional stats or bonuses or benefits. So it is beneficial to have higher quality items because they will be stronger and provide you with more benefit. Durability is the durability of the materials. So if this runs out, then the craft will become unsuccessful. And there are craft skills which can give additional durability. So this is the amount of times you can do something that will either increase the progress or the quality of the item. You've also got labor, and this is your character's total labor, which will decrease each time a crafting skill is used. The more labor you have, the more you can do during the crafting process. Additional labor can be gained via passives, crafting gear, and trinkets. And then finally, you've got the condition, and this is the current condition, and this will make a difference on the progress and upgrading of a crafted item. When you use a crafting skill at normal condition, it will give you 100% value of the progress that it's supposed to. So when you press a synthesis skill or a touch skill to increase the progress or the quality, it'll give you the normal amount. So when you hover over the skill that you're pressing, it'll tell you how much progress. So it might be 25 progress. If it's successful, normal condition, it'll give you 25 progress. You can also have poor, which gives 50%. So it will halve the amount of progress that you have. If you've got good condition, it'll be 110%, great is 120%, and then excellent is 150%. So it's really important to look at the condition when you're using these skills because sometimes they will give you more benefit and other times it will be much worse. So you have to really plan how you're going to craft things to make the most of the condition. And better quality materials that you use will give you a higher condition. So you definitely don't want to use synthesis or touch crafting skills when the condition is poor. So when we look at the different type of crafting skills, all crafting skills cost labor to use. You have to balance using your skills with making sure you don't run out of labor. So synthesis skills, this is used to increase your progress towards completing the craft of the item you're trying to make. Shine skills will improve the condition quality. This helps you to maximize your synthesis and quality usage. If the current condition is poor, then you might want to use a shine skill to try and increase that for the next time so you can start to use synthesis and touch again. Now touch skills increase the quality of the item, and if you've got a lot of labor, this is more useful, but the mend skills will restore durability. So if your durability is nearly run out, you can restore more as long as you've got enough labor to do so. As you gain a higher level, you'll unlock better crafting skills. So the apprentice synthesis, for example, does 25 progress and is guaranteed to succeed for 10 labor. At level 35, you'll unlock master synthesis, which does 75 progress, but it has an 80% success chance for the cost of 20 labor. So if it does succeed, you do get a much more significant improvement there. And obviously, if you're using master synthesis on an excellent conditioned item, that's going to give it 150% benefit as well. So as you can see, like these will have a much bigger impact the further you get into your crafting. So when we go for crafting passives, blacksmith, carpentry, weaving and cooking all share a similar set of passives. The most essential should be the labor passives. The more labor you've got, the better it is, the easier it is to craft items. It's so useful to have as much labor as possible. So that is the first one you want to go with. Secondly, you ideally want to follow that with increased synthesis. This just means that you'll get more bang for your buck every time you're using your labor to improve the synthesis. It's going to do that. Next, you've got increased touch, which would be the next most useful, as it's really useful for higher level crafting. And if you filled all your labor, you've filled all your synthesis, then increasing touch would definitely be very valuable as like the third thing, because by that point you will be quite high level in crafting and you'll maybe want to start increasing the quality. Finally is the increased experience, and the only reason is because this has the least value on long-term crafting. However, experience gains from crafting can be huge, especially with multi-crafting. So it is up to you if you want to take this sooner, but in the long term, it has like the least value towards your crafting, but it does give a huge benefit. So I've been there before crafting food items when I've done a mass craft and I've gained 25,000 experience within 5 seconds crafting food items. So it can be a huge experience gain, especially with the crafting experience passives. It's really up to you. So it's not worth it long term, but it can be very useful. So some other useful crafting info: labor. You can increase your labor with passives, but also gear, which can be upgraded, and trinkets. You will find various trinkets from quests as you progress through the game, and gear can be crafted at the weaving station. The more labor you have, the better you can craft. Item quality. So if you've noticed, some of the items have different border colors. You've got green, you've got kind of a blue color. This is the item quality, and you can craft using higher quality items by ticking the little boxes to use the higher quality items. Using higher quality items improves the condition while crafting, making crafting faster or allowing you to craft higher quality items more easily. And at the minute, people are selling these for the same price or cheaper than standard quality items. So it might be worth now saving a lot of your higher quality items because people are selling them cheaper, which doesn't make any sense, but it's mostly because people aren't high enough level in crafting to benefit enough from doing high level crafting, crafting high quality items. So keep an eye on that item quality. Mass crafting. As you increase your level in a craft, you'll be able to begin mass crafting. As you increase your skill level, you'll be able to mass craft more and more of each item. This allows you to craft a lot of stuff in one go, but also it will give you a huge return. So you'll have to press much less buttons to do the same amount of things. And this works especially well with food crafting when you kind of refining an ore into an ingot and things like that. Mass crafting is super useful, but it also means that huge burst of experience gains as well, which is excellent. Oversupply. So mass crafting is great for both making a lot of an item and for leveling your skill, but you will reach an oversupply limit if you do it too much within a short space of time. When you reach different oversupply thresholds, the crafting tax to make an item keeps increasing. And this is to stop the game being flooded with too many items and the market prices from crashing. So it is worth keeping an eye on oversupply. If you do craft like 1,000 Moa rations, you're going to start to see that oversupply effect come into play, and then you're going to have to pay a much higher fee to craft. You have to pay a silver fee each time you craft something alongside the materials. When you are crafting, you may fail an item, which means you will lose the money that you spent on the crafting tax, and you'll also lose the items that were used to try and craft it. Quality crystals. When crafting gear and weapons, once you fill the meter on quality, you'll gain 1 quality crystal, which will add a random extra stat to the item you're crafting. You can add multiple quality crystals, which will just mean that the item will have more additional stats. The primary and secondary stat of an item are still the most valuable, but quality crystals will become more and more important with higher level gear, and it will also require a lot of labor to keep adding quality crystals. So this is why labor is so important, so you can craft these better items with more stats on them. So crafting gear, we've got trinkets, and by doing different quests, you'll find a range of useful trinkets that are good for crafting. I would personally always take a crafting trinket where possible, where there's an option to take one of those or something else, since other combat related trinkets are easily replaceable in the early stages of the game, and there is a lot of good combat based trinkets. But by having extra labor from a crafting trinket, it will make it much more easier to craft and to succeed. With crafting gear, in the weaving menu there are craftable gear for all of the crafting professions: cooking, weaving, blacksmithing and carpentry. They are not as useful in the very early stages, as many items can be easily crafted with one button press. But as you get upwards of sort of level 30 in a craft, begin making higher tier items, you'll want to increase the quality of these items, and you'll want to be using crafting gear, as it will add a nice bonus to your labor, especially if you have a full set. So crafting gear can be upgraded with infusions to make it even stronger. Tier 1 gear starts with a +2 labor bonus and increases by 1 each infusion level that you increase it per piece of gear that you wear. So it is very significant in terms of increasing your labor. So advanced crafting strategies. If you want to craft like a pro, you need to make sure you're wearing crafting gear and trinkets, along with having the labor passives, and you also want to be using the best materials to improve the condition of the item to make it easier to craft the highest quality item. The first thing you do is use the highest level synthesis skill that you have and keep using it until you are one away from completing your progress. Now you know exactly how much labour you have remaining, you can begin to use your touch abilities to increase the quality. If the condition becomes poor, do not use synthesis or touch abilities. You use a shine ability to improve the condition. You increase the quality as high as you can until you fill the quality meter as many times as you can, and then you use your final labour to synthesize and complete the craft. That is generally the way that you want to do crafting when you're trying to do it to the absolute top tier standard. And then we move on to fishing. So fishing in Ravendawn has a lot of potential at providing a nice source of silver, cooking materials, and possibly more. Ravendawn's creative director, Nita, has previously mentioned that the fishing endgame will be lucrative. We currently don't know what's in store for the latter stages of fishing, but in the early phases, it's a fairly relaxed activity you can do quite easily and gain sort of 10,000 plus silver an hour or so from fishing, depending on your current skill level. Fishing has a number of parts to it. You've got your fishing level, which will determine the kind of fish you have potential access to. Then you have different weights of each fish. By catching a rarer fish and a larger fish will net a much higher value. And fishing is completed by damaging a fish until it is caught. When doing fishing, you need to look in water or the ocean for the hook symbol. Once pressing on this, you'll begin fishing in that spot. You then have to wait for the weight fishing bar to fill. Sometimes this will be really fast, other times it can take a while, and this usually depends on the type of fish, the weight, and your fishing skill level. Once a fish is hooked, a fishing rod will appear on the screen, and on this has a lot of information, and you will now begin damaging the fish to try and catch it. Now a little side note for this is if you die while carrying fish, you will drop some of them, or sometimes all of them, depending on how many you've got. So don't do ocean fishing or fishing in areas with conflict or war zone unless you're prepared to fight other players sometimes. So you can drop some fish. It's one of the only things in the game alongside trade packs that will drop upon death. So when we look at the fishing meter, firstly is the progress bar in the middle. Once the fish reaches the end of this and it's fully green, the fish will be caught. You've then got the red meter to the left side. This is the rod durability. If this touches the white meter from the opposite side, then you won't catch the fish. So you want to have your rod durability kept as low as possible and away from the white meter on the opposite side. The white meter to the right is the tension on the line, but it could also be the kind of time because it kind of slowly fills over time. If this meter gets filled, you also will fail at fishing. You've then got the other things that will pop up during fishing. You've got the blue fish timer. This is basically a buff. While this is active, you should use your highest damaging fishing abilities. These can also gain multipliers like ×2 or ×3, and this means that doing damage to fish is increased. Now when you've got the red fish timer, this is a debuff, and while this is active, you should use the give slack and the weaker fishing abilities, because if you use stronger abilities, this will fill up much faster. By catching fish, the thing that you do with them is you go to the fishing post that you can find on your map. When you speak to this NPC, you can either sell the fish for silver or you can cut them into food materials. Now, some of the food materials are useful, but a lot of them are for much high level cooking. So most players tend to try and fish and get a full backpack full of fish and then sell them all for a profit. So the general fishing strategy, so this is kind of basic low level fishing strategy, is obviously to start with you'll only have basic reel, so you'll just use that. Once you can, you'll unlock big reel quite early on, so you want to start off with a big reel always. Then you do 2 times basic reel. One of the timers will then typically appear. If it's red, use give slack followed by basic reel. If it's green, use big reel as much as possible. If the red meter is too close to the white meter, always use give slack. Otherwise, you just generally alternating between big and basic reel skills. With the fishing passives, the main priority should be to increase the damage. This definitely helps to have it early on, as it will make catching fish significantly easier. So go for that increased damage. Once you have that, increased fishing weight will start to give you a lot more value of your fish, so you'll make more silver. So take the increased weight once you've got the increased damage. Fortune Fisher or Swift Angler could be an option after that, with my personal preference being on Swift Angler. And then going for increased speed of getting a fish on the line would be kind of my 4th choice. Followed finally by increased experience. There's nothing wrong with the increased experience, but since you cannot change your fishing passives, the increased experience is a waste in the long term. Even though you'll level up your fishing slightly faster, when you consider the other passives, increasing your damage and speed should be fairly balanced out. So because if you've got increased damage and increased speed, you'll be able to catch fish faster, you'll be able to increase the speed that they're getting hooked, which is more or less the same as getting increased experience anyway as well. So they kind of balance out in that sense. Next we've got breeding. Now I haven't had the chance to participate in much breeding myself as I don't have any player land at the minute. I'm using the community land, but based on the information I've spoke to with my guild members, I know a little bit about it. So breeding is a very lengthy and time-consuming profession in which you breed mower mounts to try and gain better mower mounts. Mowers can have special abilities, they can have traits, combined with rare colours and higher tiers, which means you'll have significantly better stats. So that is the general aim of breeding, but it will take a very, very long time. To breed, you will need to purchase some land. You cannot do breeding in the community land. This may change very soon as there's no available land in the game, can only be bought from players. Once you have land, you go to your housing editor screen and you need to place a mower stable. Next you go to Jebediah, the NPC, on the south exit of Raven Crest, and you'll need one male and one female mower, which cost 7,500 silver each one. You go back to the mower stable and select breeding with your male and female mower, and you'll now gain a 36-hour timer. After the 36-hour timer, there will be a 24-hour timer. Now once that timer expires, you now have to take care of the mower every 2 hours, and you have to do this somewhere around 6 times. Taking care of mower requires one random action, so you don't know which one it's going to be. It will just pop up asking you to do one of 3 things. You'll either have to feed the mower with mower rations, you'll have to give the mower medicine, or you will have to pet them. Once this is completed, you will gain a new mower. Mowers can be sold to other players on the market, or you can reuse them for breeding if necessary. Mowers do have breeding limits however, and it's worth noting that even if you breed a tier 2 mower with another tier 2, it's possible to get a tier 1 mower in return. So the results of breeding can sometimes be quite underwhelming and frustrating, especially after the lengthy time it takes to get one. The main things you're looking for when breeding mower include higher tier. So these will have much higher stats in your speed, your strength and that kind of thing. So these are what you're looking for. You want higher tier mower. And these are also much more valuable on the market. You're also looking for rare colours. So there are rare mower colours, some of which have a 1 in 10,000 chance. So things like red and purple and that kind of thing, you're looking for those rarer colours because those are going to be as well more valuable. You also want to look at the speed stat. This is the general movement speed of the mower, and the higher the better. Some people are always looking for faster mowers. You're also looking for the strength. So this improves the speed your mower moves when pulling a wagon. So again, a really, really vital component of the mowers. And finally, we move on to leveling your crafting skills. So these are just a few little tips on how you want to maximize leveling up. So with mining, for lower levels, you want to go to the Ravendawn mine in Rona Woods, the bear cave in which is Crag and Glademire. On Sujako Island, seek out the Goblin Caves, and then on Harbour Island, you have the Turtleshell Mines. These are just a few places to name. Mining in general is just the most difficult to level up, so you need to commit to purposely farming the nodes and leveling it up. If you can combine things, especially at lower level, go into that bear cave, you'll also get hide, you'll get the mining nodes. It'll be very, very useful. If you want to switch your archetypes to keep yourself low level so that you can keep hunting in the bear cave, this is a great place to start out. And if you do this process as you keep progressing so you can stay in those areas for a long period of time and just keep on farming that mining materials, that will be really super useful. For wood cutting to level up fast, you want to chop down trees on Sujako Island or Rona Woods. These are heavily populated tree areas, and you just go around the overland area and keep chopping down trees as much as possible. While you're offline, plant trees in your community farmland such as fir trees, which take 8 hours to grow. So if you know you're going to be offline, grow something like a fir tree because that's 8-hour duration. Always plant trees that will take the same amount of time as you'll be offline. So then when you get online, you'll get an absolute ton of materials, but also a lot of gain on your profession skill. With fishing, this is a great semi-AFK profession that you can do while watching a show or paying minimal attention. When doing this, do fishing on land and try to focus on zones that don't have active conflict. If you want to level fast, it's much easier to find fishing nodes while doing ocean fishing, but if you are killed while doing so, you'll drop some of your fish. So fishing is something that will require more attention in those kind of areas. Fishing is generally quite a slow profession to level up since you only gain one fish at a time. Whereas like crafting, you can do multi-craft and level it up much faster. But when you are fishing, you do need to commit to it. It's something you just need to go and do it for a significant amount of hours and progress through it. It does get quite slow as you get higher level, but obviously you can gain rarer fish and heavier fish as you get those passives as well. So it can be very profitable. So it's worth committing the time. With farming, it's only leveled up by growing crops on your farmland. And you need to try to time everything really, really well by planting items relative to your playtime and your schedule. If you're going to be online for 3 hours, plant potatoes every hour for 3 hours. If you're then going to be offline and at work for 12 hours, plant some corn. If you're going to be away for a weekend, get those 28.5 hour peppers growing. Farming is 100% about maximizing your time. Husbandry is pretty much the same as farming, although it requires slightly more effort because you need to place animals and let them mature. So take that into account and try and work that into your timing. An animal might take 8 hours to mature and then need harvesting every 3 hours. So they do require a lot more timing and effort, especially to maximize the efficiency. So if you're going to be going to sleep and you know you're going to be in bed for 7 hours, put your animal down just before bed, and when you wake up, you'll be able to harvest it, and then you'll have to wait 3.5 hours, and you might want to come back again. So that is kind of how you do it. Always harvest 3 times if you want more profit, or harvest twice and butcher the 3rd time if you want a bigger experience gain. With cooking, it relies heavily on materials, but if you manage your farm to provide the materials, then you can level this up easily, but at the material cost. It doesn't cost you anything other than the cost it took you to grow the materials in your own farm. Always try to grow the materials based upon the highest level recipe that you can complete, and especially the highest level recipe that you can mass craft, especially if that has some minimal value on the market. To begin with, it is super slow to level up as you do one item at a time. It'll take a very long time. But once you unlock that mass crafting, you can level up extremely quickly. Multi-crafting items you use a lot is ideal. So things like Moa rations, cookies, regen drinks and more. Mass craft them for yourself and your friends. It's almost impossible to make a profit from cooking since the farming materials needed are more valuable than the end product of crafting. So this is very much a big lost craft. Now the benefits of cooking is when you start making high level items and multi-crafting them, you might lose a lot of silver, but it's giving you so much archetype and legacy experience that it'll be more than actually killing enemies. You could mass craft 50 Moa rations to gain 32,000 experience in basically 5 seconds, which would be more with rested experience. So within a few minutes of doing this, you could be gaining hundreds of thousands of experience mass crafting. But the value of these items is now very low, so you wouldn't have much benefit of selling them. You might be able to recoup a small amount of the silver cost to make them, so it's not really worth it financially, but in terms of leveling up, both your cooking and your legacy and archetypes, it is very, very good. I personally like to grow things on my farm daily, which are going to be used within the highest level cooking recipe that I can currently make. When I first log in, I will harvest all the materials that I've grown. I'll then go to the cooking station and use all of the materials that I grew to then gain a good chunk of level. So even at sort of level 45, just cooking with the materials I made the previous day can get me 20, 30, 40% of one level per day just from doing that. Next, we've got blacksmithing. In the early stages, it is a wasted craft if you start putting all of the materials into making gear. So gear is pretty much not valuable at the minute. To begin with, it's better to just turn your ore into ingots and then sell them for a profit. And even better to do this with mass crafting. You can craft various items as well, such as armor and weapons, and then you can just deconstruct them for Dawn Essence so that you can unlock more Raven packs. That's another thing I sometimes like to do. I personally have currently been saving all of my ingots so I can craft stuff later down the line, but I'm just refining them and mass craft refining them so that I can get that chunk of experience. You've also got your stone, which you want to mass craft into waystones. This is something that you can just constantly be using. They're not really that valuable. Stone is semi-valuable because it's used in trade packs, but if you want to level up blacksmithing really fast, make sure you're using stone because you always get stone every time. Every time you mine, the first bit is stone, and then you get the materials underneath. So you've always got a ton of stone. Mass craft them into waystones. Use the waystones every time you're fighting enemies. You can just use one. It'll increase your attacking power very slightly, so they add a little bit of value to your attacking, but they will add a significant amount of experience to blacksmithing when you mass craft a ton of them and get rid of that stone. Once you're able to make tier 2 gear, look at which is the most valuable on the market and then do that to level up. And just get rid of any of the low-level materials you've got. You can do the same as you keep progressing, but once you get to tier 3, you start to make a decent amount of silver from making items. However, you do have the factor of random stats included. So now, where an item could be worth 20k to 200k depending on the stats, it's much more of a risk of resources, but you do have the chance to gain a lot of value. There's also a lot of value in certain items like fishing hooks and other non-gear items are worth considering making. And if you're able to craft that higher tier gear, then it's also very, very good. With carpentry, because farming logs is so easy, so is leveling up carpentry, which also means there are some of the lowest value items to begin with. You can craft quite a few weapons in carpentry, but they're not very valuable. It's probably better to farm logs, refine them into planks, and then sell the planks and continue doing that until you can make tier 3 weapons or higher value items like fishing rods and ship or weapon parts. With weaving, this is one of the most expensive crafts since the materials are expensive, even the low level materials. But again, it's best to just refine materials for the lower levels and save the materials for crafting more valuable stuff later. Making craftsman's cloth and craftsman's threads is useful even though it's low level stuff, since the crafting gear is all really useful and fairly valuable. Crafted gear from weaving is worth a lot if it's made with good perks, and there's some nice ship parts made in weaving too. You can grow materials needed for weaving in your community farmland if you want to level this faster, and also hunt enemies like wolves and bears, which drop hide in their loot table. So that is everything for this ultimate crafting and professions guide for Ravendawn. If you've got any questions, please let me know in the comments below, or you can join me on the Tank Club Discord, where we will be able to help you out with any questions as well. If you've not started playing Ravendawn yet, make sure you check out the game using my referral link, which will get you 3 days free Patreon and a little housing companion as well, and it will help support the Tank Club content. Big thank you to our patrons and YouTube members for all their support in keeping us funded. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye for now.